Great. Okay, perfect. Excellent. Audio is good, all coming in. That's great. Well, thank you very much for coming tonight. Really, really delighted to have so many of you turn up to learn a little bit more about the CharityWorks program. And actually, what's really exciting more than anything is just to see so many people who are interested in a career in creating social change. And I think that's what, first and foremost, CharityWorks is all about. From a graduate perspective, CharityWorks is a fantastic graduate entry point for the nonprofit sector, which is traditionally a very challenging sector to get into, and yet at the same time requires so much talent to tackle some of the UK's most pressing issues. First and foremost, CharityWorks itself is about getting great leaders into the sector and is all about the beneficiaries and ultimately the program. And we often say the program works through you as people who would like to be on the CharityWorks program, but isn't specifically for you, because actually it is geared up to bring great leaders in to ultimately have an impact on the beneficiaries that are dependent upon the charities. This is our marketing poster, which you can see, which is our title slide, where I can also point out that CharityWorks is and has been for the past 2 years in the Times Top 100 Graduate Employers. We are delighted that that's the case. The Times Top 100 Graduate Employers is collated off of a very open question. The survey poll is put out by High Flyers, and an open-ended question is asked: which graduate employer do you think provides the best opportunities for graduates? It is an open-ended question, and to get in the top 100 employers, you have to be amongst the top 100 answers within that. And we have been for the past 2 years, which is really, really exciting, and I think very, very good for the sector. What I want to do first and foremost, before I do anything, is just give an introduction to CharityWorks as the team. This picture that you will see on the screen at the moment is a little bit dated because firstly, Beth isn't in this picture, and Beth is a big part of the CharityWorks team, but it does give a kind of a select group of us, many of whom are still working on CharityWorks. My name is Craig. I am the campaigns manager for the CharityWorks program. My responsibility is to run our campus recruitment campaign. So that mainly is making sure that we're attending the right campus events, making sure we're on hand at universities. And the other side to my role on CharityWorks is working with prospective charity partners to encourage and support them to take on graduates as part of the program. So I get to see it from both ends, and it's very exciting and a real privilege to be part of the program. I will introduce you to Beth when she arrives, and there she is. Hi all, sorry for the delay. Here to answer questions. Beth works alongside me as part of the campaigns team, and she is heavily involved in managing our campus ambassadors, who are people that are on the CharityWorks program and going out on campus this year to raise awareness about the non-profit sector and talk about some of the work that they're doing. So if you are attending any of your university's career fairs this year, do keep an eye out for CharityWorks. We can't get to them all because we're a relatively small team, but we very much do our best and punch above our weight a little bit in terms of getting to as many events as we can on campus with a small team. So CharityWorks is all about making a difference ultimately, and to do it whilst having a professional career within the non-profit sector. So whether we're talking about things like rising inequality, an aging population, climate change, shortages of affordable housing, social care, everybody in the UK is affected by some pretty big pressing social issues. These are just some of the social issues, and I think what's become kind of quite interesting over the past couple of years or so is ultimately with, particularly in the political landscape and the slight kind of, I say slight, actually quite considerable move to the right in politics in the United States, and also with the advent of Brexit and things in the UK, and also the impact of an austerity agenda since 2010 with the coalition government, is that the non-profit sector is being asked to do more with increasingly reduced resources, and actually these social issues are not all going to be solved by the UK non-profit sector in its own right. There are many, many players. This is why they are very wicked, complex social issues. They involve the private sector, the public sector, government, small community-based organizations to large corporates. But the non-profit sector, now more than ever, being such a huge player within within creating social impact, now more than ever needs very talented and committed people to work on solving some of these incredibly complex issues. So it is a very exciting place to work, and it is a real opportunity for you to get hands-on with solving some of the most pressing social issues of our time. We want people to be able to work on these issues over the long term. In order to do that, you also need to earn a living. So we want you to be able to build a life and a career for yourself whilst becoming a brilliant social leader. And that's essentially the ethos of the program and what we're trying to achieve with CharityWorks, which has been running now for the past 10 years. So this, moving into 2019, will be the 11th program year for CharityWorks. And we've seen CharityWorks grow from 3 graduate trainees in its kind of first iteration to this year looking at around about 140 in place across 80 or so nonprofit organizations. Just to Isabel, who's asked the question about whether this will be available after the webinar, it certainly will. We'll be sharing all these slides with you. So don't feel the need to frantically make notes. Please do ask questions as you go. Save some of the bigger questions for the end when we can answer them in the Q&A, but we will definitely be sharing the slides with you at the end of the process, probably by the end of the week. So I'm just going to share a few slides with you at the moment that I think sometimes summarizes what people think of the nonprofit sector. Here is an image of somebody working for Concern Worldwide, fundraising. And actually, when people think of fundraising, they often think of your local high street getting out there, getting you to sign up for a direct debit, or possibly at various events. This is one image that I think summarizes what some people think of the nonprofit sector. But what I really want to know, and I'm going to use this term non-profit sector, which actually encompasses a whole host of other areas other than just charities. I want to know what you think of the non-profit sector. So I want to know basically a few words that come to mind when you think of working for a charity, or what a charity does, or what the non-profit sector does more broadly. So here's a great example to kick us off. This is fundraising, and probably what you think of is people out working on the streets and raising awareness and fundraising. So I just want you to pop, I mean, Sarah's asked a great question already to Beth, do we work with any international development organizations? So I'll leave Beth to answer that question. The answer is yes. Beth can flesh it out a little bit more detail. But what I want to hear is aspects of the nonprofit sector that you think of. International development is clearly one. Fundraising would be another. Let's see what else comes through the text chat box. So anything you can pop in that text chat box when you think of the nonprofit sector or the charitable sector. There will be a delay in me asking that before I can actually see the responses. Yes, Zoe, lobbying, very, very important. Campaigns, Haley, absolutely, and Joshua. Policy, a big important part of the sector, so that kind of crux where things in the sector sit between the non-profit sector and government. Yes, Hanan, to volunteering. Yes, to social change, human rights. Mind, very, very good example of a large mental health organization. Advocacy, absolutely. Well done, Emily, for flagging grants and trusts. So foundation sector, very, very important. Research, absolutely. Mission driven. This is great. This is wonderful, guys. First hand and first and foremost from Haley, helping people in need, absolutely. So beneficiary focus being the most, or one of the most important things, the whole reason the sector exists. Yes, international humanitarianism. Yes, when we're thinking about fundraising and advocacy, Anna has a good point. We're also thinking about corporates and corporate sponsorship. Tracy makes a really interesting point about whether or not the role of the nonprofit sector is to kind of fill the gap where the government kind of won't fund, or particularly in kind of cuts to statutory funding and reductions in funding in real terms across things like the health service and social care. Is that where the charity sector steps in? CSR, Hanan, very, very important, becoming a very important focus area for a lot of corporate organizations. Outreach for Joshua, absolutely. This is great, and this actually just shows that the sector is very, very broad and very, very diverse in terms of its offer. A lot of people think of fundraising, a lot of people think of aid, which has come up there. So you've got a picture there to represent aid and outreach and humanitarian development. A lot of people will their only understanding of what they think of the non-profit sector will be what they see either in the news or they see a local charity shop and local charities kind of raising awareness and funds. And many people, it will be lobbying Parliament or UK aid and thinking about government. And also one that people haven't mentioned so much, but very, very important part of the sector is housing. The UK housing crisis is a big, big social issue, one of the biggest social issues, and actually housing plays a very, very important role within solving some deeply complex social problems, as well as things like poverty. Housing is a kind of a cornerstone to a lot of social problems. So again, very, 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 very important in terms of the sector. Before I talk about the Charity Works program, what's really interesting about the sector and why the sector needs important sort of great graduate leaders and people to come into the sector to be emerging leaders is lots of things are changing within the sector. So we've talked about reductions in statutory funding, more and more organizations moving towards a model where actually they need to raise more funds themselves rather than being dependent on government funding. Increase in demand for the sector because of the UK government and local councils having less funding, particularly in areas like health and social care. There is also a big piece of work to be done around how the sector is portrayed, thinking about marketing. So there have been some pretty serious scandals over the past couple of years, particularly thinking about international development and also thinking about the Olive Cook case, somebody who committed suicide and was one of the Royal British Legion's biggest kind of sellers of poppies, and raising awareness and raising funds for that, and there being a kind of a question mark as to whether charities were latching onto that too much and sending her far too much information and asked for support. So there is a lot to deal with within the sector, increasing pressures, but nonetheless a very exciting and challenging place to work. So there is so much in terms of challenge, in terms of challenge and opportunity available within the sector as a whole. What I want to do is to talk to you a little bit about how Charity Works provides a graduate entry point to this challenge, and how it provides an opportunity for excellent graduates to become leaders within this space and within this sector. So the Charity Works graduate program is predominantly two things. First and foremost, it is a full-time paid job within the non-profit sector. And when I say non-profit, I mean charities, sometimes social enterprises, sometimes social housing organizations. So as a Charity Works graduate trainee, you will deliver a full-time paid job on a 12-month contract at one of our partner charity or housing associations. At the same time as being paid in your full-time job and your specific role, you will also undertake an acclaimed leadership development program, which will help to introduce you to what you need to work and lead within the UK non-profit sector. So Charity Works is a combination of a real live job. Pretty much all of the placements on Charity Works are real live roles that were not specifically necessarily there as a graduate position for the sake of having a graduate role in an organization. They are there to perform a job. I'm going to speak to you a little bit about what that looks like in practice and what some of those roles look like, but they are working on real live social issues. And on top of that is a leadership development program, which is not a qualification program in its own right, and that's mainly because there is so much experiential learning on the job that it looks like around about 1 day a month to 2 days a month working on the program. But the program is endorsed by the Institute of Leadership and Management. It's a very, very well recognized program within the sector in terms of kickstarting your career. So over the 12 months, you'll not only build experience of the sector itself through the leadership development program and through your networks, but you will also gain an understanding of really key issues within the UK non-profit sector, as well as having access to a national network dedicated to making a difference. I think the network is one of the most important things you develop on Charity Works, because you are working with and coming together with other graduates on the program who are working at 80 to 100 different nonprofit organizations, all in completely different areas. So you can connect with people that are working within your the same area in which you're working, whether that's international development or housing, or whether it's mental health. But you're also getting to collaborate with other graduates, think about how you're sharing your work with them. And as well as building a network amongst your peers in terms of graduates on the program, you're also building networks amongst potential future employers. You're building networks with chief executives, you're building networks with boards of trustees. You are working across a network on the program, both within your organization and more broadly within the UK nonprofit sector. And access to that network is so important and such an important part of the program. I'm going to talk a little bit about the components of the leadership development program, which we broadly summarized here, is getting matched to an external mentor, coming together with your fellow trainees and leaders in the sector to explore and debate key issues affecting not only your work but society as a whole, producing your own research and developing your understanding of the sector. So I'm going to break down what those components look like for you. But before I do that, what I want to talk to you about is what placements can look like on the program. When you apply to CharityWorks, you are applying to the CharityWorks graduate program. And if you are successful, we will work with you to placement match you into a role based on a number of different factors, but including your preferences for the kind of role that you're looking for. When we're placement matching, we're thinking about three things in particular. One is your stipulation around what you're able to do in terms of location. So you might be open-minded to relocating for a role. And I would say that there are a significant number of roles in and around London, as you'd expect, but there are also a significant number of roles in the southwest of England, in the northwest of England, in the Midlands, and a handful in Scotland. And every year, the roles and their locations, whilst we're working with some partners year on year, some will change, and we'll work with new charities next year. So we're expecting the roles and the variety in terms of location to expand, as always. In terms of the second aspect, in terms of your preferences, if you were successful, you would indicate to us the kind of cause area that you're interested in, and also the type of role. So it's the type of role that I want to talk about now. So that could be a role that's frontline. Now that could be volunteer management, or it could be working on specific operational services. It could be working directly with your beneficiaries and service users. It could be working on projects that help to identify where there's unmet needs in service provision. It could be writing reports for commissioners, but it will be that kind of role is directly aligned to face-to-face service user engagement, or probably once removed from that, where actually you're working with people who are working directly themselves, like volunteers, face-to-face with service users. Research and policy, very exciting area of work, very popular every year. So this is conducting research, writing reports, conducting original data analyses, preparing public statements or briefings. We've just filled a role actually this year that is a policy-based role where people will be briefing for members of parliament and taking those briefings to MPs and to various committees in government. Often it's the charity responding to government consultation. So very exciting area, research and policy. That's kind of the crux between the non-profit sector and government, which are so closely aligned in many cases. There are internal based roles, so internal comms and HR, and there we're thinking about developing people. So developing people to perform better and make charity and organizational change within charity that helps that charity to function better. So that's responding to internal customers, that's evaluating and delivering internal communications. Some of that is about making people who are quite in the back office, I guess, of charities feel more connected to the in and out of their work that's benefiting their service users. And that's such a crucial area of the nonprofit sector, to make people feel internally, irrespective of what they're working on in an organization, very well connected to the actual crux of their work, which is helping those beneficiaries. It could be delivering and managing staff training. It could be supporting management of staff. Then there's the external facing side of comms and campaigns. So this is marketing and developing public campaigns. This is raising the profile of a charity. This is managing digital comms, promoting a cause through public relations, producing promotional material, sometimes supporting fundraising and relevant campaigns. So that's the kind of things that you would expect to be quite external facing. And I hope that the picture that we're building up here is one where charities are far beyond just what you would expect in terms of fundraising, although I am going to come on to fundraising next, in terms of the opportunity available. So charities work just like any other organization. There is a real opportunity for you to develop a professional career in internal comms, HR, project management, marketing, whatever that might be, but within the context of the non-profit sector and creating social change. Business development and fundraising, so supporting existing income streams or identifying new income streams, especially important when charities are more and more dependent on finding their own funding in order to carry out their mission. That could be developing new business, working directly with corporate partners. It could be organizing and delivering events, and identifying and generating new sources of income. We also have very specialist roles on charity works that are working in charities in IT, finance and technical based roles. Now, a lot of these roles are open to people from any degree background, but with an interest in technology, for example. And some of them will be very specific to people with an IT or finance background. I would suggest, particularly when thinking about these roles, that you are, if you're coming through the process, very open-minded, because there are so many exciting opportunities to develop as a professional, whether that's managing IT systems, coding and developing apps for charities, design and development of apps. From financial perspective, it's an opportunity to work in accountancy or financial management. Investment and portfolio management is really, really important, particularly for organizations that are working to support social enterprises, for example. So there's some really interesting technical roles, which again, some of those are open to people that have a very specific IT or technology or STEM or finance background, and some are open to all graduates. Very, very interesting roles within that space to develop as an IT or finance professional. So that hopefully gives you an understanding of what placements could look like on the program. And I'll talk to you a little bit more about how the placement matching process works for those that are successful. This is a bit of a sample taste of employers that we've worked with over the past kind of 3 or 4 years. For 2019, we're recruiting 140 graduates across around 80 non-profit partners. So what does that look like in reality? Well, for some, it is very big international development organizations like Marie Stopes International or Christian Aid. For others, it's organizations working in housing, including the National Housing Federation, which is the body that oversees social housing provision in the UK, or one of our housing partners like Metropolitan Thames Valley. For some, it's disability-based organisation, Action on Hearing Loss, or ageing-based organisations like Age UK. For some, it's community organisations, and also things to do with human rights, the LGBT Foundation, for example. Hospice care is very well represented on the program as well, so supporting people in end-of-life care, as is looking at supporting children, so NSPCC, another one of our big partners. The student movement is also well represented in the non-profit sector, so certain students' unions that we've worked with and are working with this year. There are advice-based charities, there are community development-based charities. There are charities working in specifically within certain areas of disability. There is such a diverse opportunity portfolio within the Charity Works partners that there literally is something for everyone. I haven't mentioned environmental charities. We work with environmental charities. We work with charities working with and promoting opportunities for people affected by poverty, particularly young people. So there's a very, very diverse mix of organizations in which you can work. If you are successful on the Charity Works program, we will work to match you, to align you to your preferences and interests. But we would also want you to be mindful that there are opportunities throughout the sector that you may not have considered. And so if you're applying to CharityWorks and you are only wanting to work for an international development organization, of course, we will work very hard if you are the right fit for that, for a role within international development, to match you to such an organization. But we would always ask that graduates are as open-minded as possible when thinking about a career in the sector. A 12-month placement on the CharityWorks program is also not you nailing your colors to the mast in terms of thinking about your career for the next 50, possibly 60 plus years, judging by the fact that none of us are going to retire anytime soon. It is 1 year of work experience and a job within the UK non-profit sector with a very well respected leadership development program that is so well recognized now within the sector, that irrespective of where you're working, it's a really, really great opportunity to break into the sector. So we would definitely want you to give us a series of preferences, and we work really, really hard to match you to relevant organizations and to relevant roles as well. Also, it's worth noting that whilst we have partners that we work with year in and year out, we are also always looking to work with new partners and speaking to new charities every year. And this year, probably around 50 to 60 of our placements on the program out of the 140 are from new charities that have never worked with us before, including charities like Barnardo's that are working with us for the first time. It's a good time just to stop, I think, for a moment and to reflect that 91% of graduate trainees would recommend us to a potential applicant. We think that's incredibly important. We want our graduate trainees to feel that they are supported in the leadership development program, and also getting a great experience from their actual role. It is wonderful to think that over 90% of trainees are in that position. That's over 100 graduates. That's somewhere in the region of around about 125 graduates every year that are telling us that. So I think that's really, really important. Let me talk to you a little bit about the leadership development program, because that's such a big important part of the CharityWorks offer. So alongside this 12-month placement at one of our charity partners where you will be paid, we also will deliver for you and to you, and you will participate in a 12-month leadership development program, which is endorsed by the Institute of Leadership and Management. Or as I have typed there, Institute of Leadership and Management endorsed leadership development program, which is a total mouthful, and not a very well written slide, sadly, from my end. But however, the program will give you an understanding of key issues affecting society and the non-profit sector. But I want to talk to you a little bit more specifically about what that looks like in practice. So what does the leadership development program look like on the CharityWorks program? It's worth noting that the leadership development program is delivered by the CharityWorks team. The CharityWorks team is made up of people who are working for and aligned to Corio, which is the managing agent for the CharityWorks program. I work Corio, Beth works for Corio. We are a talent development consultancy that are dedicated to mobilizing talent to create social change. So we are a social enterprise dedicated to developing people, firstly in a graduate capacity in the non-profit sector through programs like CharityWorks, but also through our consultancy work and developing leaders and managers in organizations. We're developing people, we're developing organizations, and we're developing networks to create social change. So that gives you a bit of background about the running of the leadership development program. But what does it actually encompass? What will you be doing across the 12 months of the program? Well, one aspect of the leadership development program is what we call impact research. You'll have the opportunity to conduct 2 detailed pieces of independent research assignments that are to have a real tangible impact on, 1, the placement organization in which you're working, and secondly, more broadly, on the third sector as a whole. So one of your pieces of research will be very closely aligned to the work that you're doing, and you will work with your line manager and work with the CharityWorks team to put together a proposal and then to produce a piece of research which we hope will then be able to be implemented in reality or support the work of the organization in which you're working. So this is about you raising your profile in the sector, and this is about you having the opportunity to work on some pretty meaty issues within your role. One example, it's my favorite example, I tell it every year. It's not the only example of the fantastic research that our graduates produce, and you only have to come along to one of our impact research exhibition events where we showcase research from our graduate trainees to see what they're working on. Incredible breadth and sheer depth of the work that they're working on. But in terms of this specific example, we had somebody working for the National Housing Federation who decided that they would do their impact research on the impact that Brexit would have on UK social housing sector. They have since delivered talks on that research to Charity Works cohort. That research was picked up by the National Housing Federation and part of their kind of policy and strategy delivered to people in government. So it's a real opportunity for you to kind of build your profile within the space. Your second piece of impact research will be something that will be aligned to your interests, but will hopefully have a tangible impact on the sector more broadly. And it's a chance for you to produce some broader research. You will also be paired with a peer coach on the program. Peer coaching is an incredible tool that helps to support you, particularly when you're dealing with live work issues. And it's an opportunity for you to be thinking about dealing with issues at peer level before escalating them up, or sometimes in lieu of escalating them up to a manager. It's a really great opportunity for you to not only get the support of a peer coach, but also to develop your own coaching practice and to develop your own ability to coach your peers, which is incredibly useful in terms of your development. So you will be allocated a peer coach. It will be somebody who is also on the Charity Works program, but potentially working at another organization, a fellow trainee who you'll meet with regularly to provide mutual one-to-one coaching and support. That is often the part of the program that people will ask about the least. I think it's one of the most important aspects of the program. If you have a great peer coach in place, you're in a really great opportunity there to not only be supported, but to develop your own coaching capacity. Thinking about mentoring, you will be matched with a mentor on the Charity Works program. This is normally somebody who is either an emerging or senior leader within the sector, or somebody who is a professional coach. They all volunteer to support the Charity Works program, and you'll meet with them up to 6 times across the year. I think mentoring is a really great opportunity for you to be thinking about your career development. So you will be thinking about yourself and how you want to develop and have this space away from your line manager, away from the specifics of the Charity Works team, but thinking about somebody that you can go to and think about your career development. That is an invaluable part of the 6 months learning across the year. You also get the opportunity to come together throughout the year at 6 or 7 points, and it's 7 learning sessions this year, where you will meet with the rest of your cohort. So think of your cohort as a class of around 20 to 25 other graduates who are on the program, and you will take part in facilitated learning sessions where you will develop very specific skill set. This is about you having the opportunity to develop your broader understanding of the sector. So thinking about things like innovation, how we measure and create social impact, but also thinking about how you can perform better in your role and better in terms of your leadership development skills. So there is the opportunity to think about how you're managing yourself and others. There's the opportunity for you to think about how you are generating and managing money in the context of your organization. So some very practical skills aligned to some really great opportunities to explore issues within the sector more broadly. The learning and development team for the learning sessions is fantastic. The delivery is constantly rated as excellent, and is a really great opportunity for you to develop within the context of the program, within the context of a kind of a smaller group, so within your cohort. Normally they're arranged depending on where your location is. So we normally have a handful of cohorts in London, a cohort sort of centered around the north of England, around Manchester, again one in the southwest around Bristol. Changes every year. We won't be guaranteeing where cohorts will be each year, but that's just where they are this year. Depends on the distribution of placements, but it's an opportunity for you to come together with your cohort. We also run national conferences. Now, these national conferences are a chance for you to come together with the whole of the Charity Works cohort for the year. So all 140 graduate trainees and various partners in the delivery team, you will get to come together where you will attend national conferences where you'll have the opportunity to network with some pretty incredible people from the UK nonprofit sector and beyond, and to hear from some pretty fantastic key sector speakers as well. The conferences are massively inspirational. They are a great chance to get out for the day and to start networking and developing your kind of key connections within the sector. I used to hate networking as a word. It kind of sounds like a bit of a sleazy word, one of those kind of like who you know rather than what you know type of things. But actually developing a strong network is about seeing how you can support other people in their work and how they can support you. It is a really fantastic opportunity. And the networks and the development of those networks in your peer learning sessions and in your conferences and through your peer coach and through your mentor is such a key aspect of the program that will help set you up in terms of your career development moving forward. Hopefully that's really, really helpful for you to know. So those are the aspects of the leadership development program as a whole. So we're just coming up on 20 to 7. So I want to talk to you a little bit about, well, firstly, I want to pop up and remind you that Charity Works is a Times Top 100 graduate employer, again, as I spoke about at the start of the session. I want to talk to you a little bit for five or so minutes about the Charity Works Taster Program. Now, the Charity Works Taster Program is new this year. Charity Works and the way we handle our applications is very important to us, that we consider the diversity of candidates coming through the process, whether they be from a Black, Asian or minority ethnic background, whether they be from working class communities, different socioeconomic backgrounds. The reason for this is that the sector is so diverse and the beneficiaries are so diverse. And what I would say about our application process is that our application process is as fair as we can make it. So one thing that we have decided with our application process as a whole is that applications are anonymized, first and foremost. So we see answers to your competency-based questions. We do not see where you went to university when marking your application. We don't see what your A-level results were. We obviously don't see any of the diversity data because for legal reasons that's separated from your application. We don't see your name, so we can't make any assumptions about you at all. The reason we do this is so that everybody has a level playing field. Doesn't matter what university you went to. It doesn't matter. It doesn't actually really matter what you studied in that regard. We have a criteria for a 2-1 or above, and that is mainly as a kind of a quality setting criteria. If you have a 2-2, but you have mitigating circumstances, or you're expected to get a 2-2 or below, then please do email info@charity-works.co.uk. We would rather speak to you about it in the first instance. The Taster Program has specifically come about because as a program, we are slightly marginally underrepresented by people from Black, Asian and minority ethnic groups. And actually, the sector as a whole is not particularly representative. Just 5.8% of non-for-profit chief executives are actually from a BAME background, which is appalling, actually. And as Charity Works is the main leadership development program for graduate entry into the sector, we really want to do something about that and encourage more people from Black, Asian and minority ethnic backgrounds into the sector, and to see just what opportunities there are available in terms of developing a professional career within that space. That statistic comes from Akivo and is based on their Pay and Equality Survey 2018. So what is the Charity Works Taster Program in a nutshell? The Charity Works Taster Program exists to ensure that the sector is reflective of the diverse communities that it serves. It will support and develop more top-class talent from Black, Asian and minority ethnic backgrounds to enter the sector and gain access to an acclaimed leadership development program through Charity Works. What it is in reality is an opportunity for you to take part in a bit of taster experience to see what it's like to work in the non-profit sector, and undergo a couple of days of professional development by some of our professional development individuals in terms of our team, and also for those that are successful on the Taster Program, it is a fast-tracked application onto the Charity Works graduate program for September 2019. That experience component can come in one or two forms. In one instance, it could be 1 or 2 days where you are job shadowing. So just getting a sense of what working in the sector can be like in different roles, or what a very specific role could be like. What does a marketing and comms role feel like working in the sector? Is it a chance for a professional career development? Or the other option, and we're working on this, and this depends on the number of placements available, is a 1-week paid experience. Of working on a real live project. So you'll either be observing areas of work or having a direct impact on a real live project supporting an organization's social impact. The second aspect is 2 days of training facilitated by experts in people and career development to strengthen your skills to create social change and help you to kickstart your career. Both pieces of the experience and the training are scheduled to take place during the Easter break. So the month where you are not at university, we are hoping to get those 2 days in, as well as the job shadowing or paid work experience during the Easter break. Just some basic information around the Taster program offer. Anybody who takes part will be known as a CharityWorks Taster Associates. You will be working with one of our CharityWorks Taster partner organizations, some of which are the same organizations that we have working on CharityWorks. And this is often driven by them. They want to see more people from a Black, Asian and minority ethnic background come through the CharityWorks process as well. The experience component, so landing with our non-profit partners, we're expecting that to be organizations in London and potentially in and around the northwest of England, Manchester. If you are not from those areas or don't feel like you can relocate, I say relocate, it's 2 days experience. So in terms of traveling for that experience, please do not feel discouraged to apply. We are playing it safe with placements because this is the first year that this aspect of the program has run, but we may very well have placements based elsewhere in the UK as well. Both the Taster Day and Placement Week are due to take place during that Easter break period. So between the 31st of March and the 26th of April, they will likely be 9 till 5 with some flexibility according to the requirements of the host organization. If you are not working and you are just job shadowing, we will, of course, or the organization will cover your travel expenses to take part. If you are working, doing anything that could be considered work, you will be paid a stipend which covers the living wage as set by the Living Wage Foundation. So not the national living wage as set by the government, but the living wage as set by the Living Wage Foundation, which works out at around about £330 for the week if you are in a non-London placement, and about £385 if you are in a London placement, assuming you're doing that full time. It is open to anybody who is identifying from a Black, Asian or minority ethnic background in their final year or having already graduated. The reason that we've asked this is because we are very, very hopeful that people that take part in this process will want to go and move on to the CharityWorks program proper. So we want you to have an interest in the non-profit sector, but we also want you to be in a position where you will have finished your studies by September. The experience will take place in Easter. Those that are successful will be invited straight to our CharityWorks assessment centres in the summer for placement for September 2019. That's all I want to say more broadly about the Taster program. There is plenty of information about it on the website. It is exclusively for people from a Black, Asian or minority ethnic background. If you apply to the Taster program, you do not have to fill in an application. For the CharityWorks program, you will be automatically opted into the CharityWorks graduate program. If you are not from a Black, Asian or minority ethnic background, or you don't feel like the eligibility criteria apply, please apply for CharityWorks in the normal way. And that's what I'm about to talk to you about next. Just a quick one on the Taster program. Applications close a lot sooner than they do for the CharityWorks graduate program. So applications for the Taster program close on the 17th of December, whereas applications for CharityWorks graduate program close on the 28th of February of next year. So you've got plenty of time to get those in. Let's talk about the recruitment and selection process before I open up to questions. So this is the recruitment and selection process for the CharityWorks graduate program. So we would expect you to have achieved or be on course to achieve a 2-1 or to have a postgraduate qualification. That can be in any discipline. We are very excited to welcome applications from people from IT and finance qualifications because every year we get placement opportunities for amazing development roles within IT and finance, and we usually have a handful of people in that process. If you score well enough to get through the CharityWorks Assessment Centre process, and you are a finance or an IT graduate looking for a finance or IT role, I'd be stunned if we didn't have something for you. We are in a position where that area is growing, so you are encouraged. Equally, most graduates applying to the program are from social sciences, languages, arts, history. It really doesn't matter what your degree discipline is. The ability to have studied at degree level at that level is the most important thing. And yeah, so that covers off the 2-1. We need you to demonstrate at least one piece of experience that demonstrates that you are committed to social change. That could be voluntary work, that could be caring responsibilities. It doesn't have to be what the most incredible piece of experience that you would want to, shout from the rooftops about. You might have done 1 week's paid or unpaid or voluntary experience in aligned to something that created social change. So volunteering something to do with the RAG Society at your university, or you might have done some fundraising for a local charity. Equally, you might have spent a year out and traveled overseas and done plenty of charitable work overseas. Whatever that is, we're looking for you to demonstrate at least one piece of experience that shows that you are committed to creating social change. If you don't feel like you have that, you have plenty of time to undertake that piece of experience before applications close, and indeed before the program starts. We assess people based on competencies. So going back to our application process, that application form and the assessment centre is all about assessing you for the following competencies: that you have a customer or beneficiary focus, that you're able to communicate with impact, that you can build positive relationship, that you have resilience, or as I've strangely written there, resiliences, which doesn't make any sense. So you can ignore the S on that. That's not plural. That you are results driven, that you can be innovative and entrepreneurial, that you can be adaptable to change, and especially that you are committed to your personal development. There are so many opportunities available on the CharityWorks program that we really need to see people who are very committed to developing within this space and within that sector. Plenty more information about those competencies. I'm not going to go through them in any detail, but all the information is available on the website. This is the recruitment and selection process. So you will complete an online application form. This year, though we're yet to confirm it, I think it's all but confirmed that we will not be running psychometric tests. I've said it now, so my guess is that we probably can't do it. Psychometric testing is used as a first pass filter for large volume graduate programs. We get around about 4,500 to 5,000 applications to the CharityWorks program each year, and so psychometric testing is a great way to filter those numbers down. Sadly, psychometric testing has proven to be somewhat biased, and for diversity reasons, as well as accessibility reasons, it looks like we're not going to go ahead with psychometric testing this year. As a result, we will be marking all application forms, which is very rare for a graduate program. So we will be marking, so if you've written an application program for a lot of graduate schemes, you will conduct an online test or psychometric test, and your application form may never be read. Yours will be double marked by 2 independent markers. So if you apply to CharityWorks, your application will be read and scored. That is our promise to you. If you are successful, you will be invited to an assessment centre. We invited around about 400 to 450 people to assessment centres, probably be about 500, I would imagine, that we'll invite this year. They usually take place. I don't even know why I'm saying this, because Beth has totally preempted and told you all the information you need to know about assessment centres. May and June of 2019, they take place up and down the UK. After that, if you're successful at assessment centre, we will make you a placement matching offer. This means that we will put you into the placement matching process and work with your preferences and the roles available to try and match you to a role. This is not a guaranteed offer of employment until we have matched you to a role, and we will endeavour to match anybody that we make a placement matching offer to a role, but we ask you to be as open-minded as you can be. We do not expect people who cannot relocate to relocate, but we have to be realistic that if you want to work for an international development charity in policy and you live in the Wirral, I'm just plucking that out of the air, we're unlikely to have a placement for you. But in realistic terms, if we can match 1, 2, or potentially 3 of your preferences around location, role type, or cause area, I think that would be something that we would be aiming to do, and we aim to do every year. We ask you to be as flexible as you can be during the process, and that you remain as open-minded as possible. We will definitely work with you for you to flourish and develop in somewhere you want to be. It is not in anybody's interest for you to be matched or working in a role that you're not happy with. It is very much a two-way conversation. So we will make a placement matching offer, and if we put you forward for a role, we will talk to you very specifically about that. We'll probably in an email give you an opportunity to let us know your thoughts around what that looks like in practice. So hopefully that gives you a bit of guidance in terms of what the recruitment and selection process looks like. Applications are open now. You can go to the website. You don't have to complete your application straight away. You can open an application, have a read of it, see what we're looking for, and I highly recommend that you do that. If you don't want to submit it now, I think that makes a lot of sense, because we have a webinar coming up in a few weeks' time, which is all about how to make the most of your application. Please do start your application, fill in the boring details, the very basic details about yourself. If you don't want to answer the competency-based questions yet, please don't, but please open your application so we've got it there sitting on the system. Be very, very careful with your email address. You will not be prompted to confirm your email address. So whatever email address you give us, however many typos goes in it, that will be what your application is locked behind. We've had a few people email to say, my email address had a typo. How do I access my application? And because the way the applications work and in terms of fairness, we can't just go in and access your application. So please be very careful. I want to take a sip of my juice, and then I will happily answer any questions that we have at this point with about 5 or so minutes to go. I think Beth's done a stellar job of answering your questions as we go, but please ask away, and we'll try and pick them up. I'll try and pick them up verbally now during the session. So I'm just going to give you a few moments to have a think about any questions that you might want to ask. If you've asked one already and Beth has missed it, because let's face it, there are a lot of questions going on there, and Beth is only one person, even though she is often very superhuman in her abilities to multitask. I will try my best to answer it. If you can reiterate it, copy and paste it, and put it again in the text chat box. And just while you're doing that, I'm going to have a little scroll up. No to, yeah, Beth's already answered that. She's already answered all of them, I think. No to first come, first serve. We will consider everybody when the applications close at the end of February. Yeah, so the salary will be higher for London-based placements, Kate. It's not set for this year. Last year's salary on the programme was £18,000 for roles outside of London and £20,000 for roles with inside of London. We haven't made an announcement on the salary yet. That will probably be made in November. It will be made before your applications close, so you will obviously have a well, we ask you if you're happy to proceed on the basis of not knowing what it will be. I expect it will take an increase so that we are in line with the living wage as best as we can be. It is something for us to discuss with the Board of Trustees, so we'll be looking at that over the next few weeks. Melanie, thanks for the great webinar. You are more than welcome, Melanie. I hope that's been really helpful to you. Joshua, will our applications be at a disadvantage if we don't know 100% which part of the charity sector we want to work in? Absolutely not. Let me make this really, really clear, guys. You might know exactly where you want to work, and that's fine. You might not have a clue and you want a year's experience in the non-profit sector. That is also absolutely fine. When you're answering questions on the application form, and again, I'll cover this off in more detail at the next webinar, which will be all about writing a great application. You are drawing on experiences to demonstrate competencies. And when we ask you questions around your motivation, just answer them as honestly as you can. And I think exploring a role in the sector and not being sure what you want to do as a fresh graduate out of university is a perfectly acceptable way to use the program, and it's part of what the program's there for. So short answer is no, you won't be at a disadvantage. Joshua. Jess, do you offer any guidance advice on performing in interviews or assessment days? We do, and I will offer them at the webinar, which I hope you will sign up to. I'm going to send you all a copy of these slides and an invite to our next webinar, which will give you the chance to Q&A on things to do with interviews and assessment centres. The only reason I'm not covering it off now is purely because of time. So please do come to that. We will definitely give you some guidance on what makes what is a good approach to interviews and assessment centres. I wouldn't be scared of CharityWorks assessment centres either, by the way. They are some of the, you're in a room with a bunch of people committed to creating social change, and we want you to succeed. And even if that wasn't on CharityWorks, we want you, if you're great people, to enter the non-profit sector and to create that change. They are the nicest. People laugh at us when we say, don't worry, it's not too bad an assessment centre. And they're kind of like, yeah, all assessment centres are horrific. In reality, the CharityWorks Assessment Centre is a really, really great place to be. So yeah, please do submit an application. We will talk about that a little bit more at the next webinar. Again, Alina, I think, what does a typical successful applicant profile look like? That's one for the next webinar. But what I would say is in terms of what we're looking for is for you to have, for your potential, basically. It's not the person with the most experience. Equally, it's a leadership development program, but leadership isn't always about shouting the loudest or being heard the loudest. Some people, that is their skill set, and that's great. And for others, they're more quiet, more thoughtful. There is no such thing as a typical successful applicant for CharityWorks, except that they are committed to social change, that they are able to demonstrate on their application form competencies like their ability to show resilience and their ability to show initiative, irrespective of where that experience comes from, whether it comes from your part-time job at Costa or whether it comes from a year working overseas with underprivileged children. Whatever that looks like in practice, we're looking for the competency. Would I recommend the scheme to someone whose degree is international development? No. So sorry, the answer is yes. The leadership development program is not a replacement for an academic program. It will build on your experience of your knowledge and learning, but it's all about working in the non-profit sector. And actually what I would say is that we get applicants from international development students all the time, and not all of them will go to work in international development, and those that do are likely to do so because they have gained and developed skills and experience that are aligned to the job that they're performing rather than necessarily their knowledge of international development. So if the international development job is in marketing and comms, and you've got some voluntary experience producing marketing comms or engaging external partners or supporting a local charity in that way, that's a really great opportunity for you to grow and learn. So what I would say to just bumbling along is the leadership development program will cover skills in leadership development as well as skills to enable you to do your job better, not the necessary academic background that you will have studied. Your international development degree is what that's for. What key advice would you give the assessment centre at Pfizer? Again, because of the depth of that answer, I think I would come to the second webinar and I'll definitely share the details with you. If I could give one pointer, it would be yourself and don't play a role. Whether your strengths are being confident and taking a leadership position in a team, or whether your strengths are being quiet, more thoughtful, it's about overdone strengths. So if you're super confident, don't overdo it and talk over people. If you are super quiet, make sure you don't get lost in an exercise, stay relevant. Thanks, Danny. I really enjoyed I promise it was juice as well. There was nothing stronger in that at all. It wasn't even Robinson's. It was Sainsbury's own. But thank you very much for that. Martina Myers, what are your tips to stand out on an application form? I think we've just about covered that. Also on the application form, answer all parts of the question, and don't go off on a tangent just trying to outline some incredible experience if it's not answering the question. Always bring your answer back to that question, because that's what we're marking against. Zoe asks, are the two pieces of research you mentioned empirical primary studies? They are a slight mix, but they are expected to have primary data. We expect you to go out and collate and collect data, and for them not just to be desk-based secondary research. So hopefully that answers that. Kate, you are welcome. I'm not sure what you hated to ask, actually, but I'm scrolling back through to... Oh, the salaries. No, of course not. You want to know what you're getting paid for your work. I think it's a very, very good question. We will release salary information shortly. You are more than welcome, Jacqueline, if you're still here. 72 people still here, which is great. What date is the next webinar? Melanie, that's a superb question. I don't remember off the top of my head. Beth, if you are listening and still there, if you can frantically find out when I've scheduled in the next webinar date, that would be great. I believe it's about 4 weeks' time. It's usually the end of November. It's usually the last week of November, same time. Not sure which day, usually on a Tuesday, I think. This one might be the last Thursday of November, but rather than me just making updates, I'm going to get Beth to have a look. That would be great. If we do have to relocate, do you provide help with finding accommodation? One thing I would say about relocation is that normally there's no financial package to support that, because obviously the charities are usually not in a position to be able to provide it. But in terms of supporting you, we often connect graduates up very quickly in Facebook groups, and a lot of what happens is graduates will pool together and decide that they want to flat share, for example, in London. We are also more than happy when you're talking about relocation to point you in the right direction. We are also happy to encourage our client organizations to provide references to you that they have, that there is a job secured for you to letting agents. You are not left alone on that, although the initiative will be taken by you. So hopefully that's kind of helpful. Directly after the completion of the graduate scheme, what sort of position? Adam, that's a great question. Not sure I didn't mention that at the time. A number of the positions on the graduate program, and we will tell you about this when we put you forward for a placement, a number of our partner employers actually want to hire the graduate full-time on a permanent contract from the get-go, and that 12-month period is a chance for you to be on the program. A lot of graduates will be offered a permanent contract within their host organization, or potentially a promotion. Some graduates then go on to line manage other graduate trainees coming in on the Charity Works program. Around about 2/3 of our employers are in that position. The rest may not be in a position to offer a role beyond that, but you are well placed within the non-profit sector. You go on to join the Charity Works Fellows Network, so we continue to stay connected to you, and you continue to stay with a Fellows Network that has to be totaling somewhere in the region of 500 to 600 graduates by now. There will be a lot of support for you within that, and we often advertise jobs across that network as well. Within the first 5 years of the program, we were in a position where it was around about 97%, I remember, were in a position where within 3 months they were in full-time employment, have gone through that process. The employment rates are very high, and you should feel pretty confident. And actually, the other thing is that you might decide that the sector isn't for you, and we hope that isn't the case. And some people decide not to stay within the non-profit sector, but the vast majority do. Yes, there are some charities connected to education. Jordan, actually, we had one charity that needed a qualified teacher last year, but there are also plenty of charities that don't need you to have any formal qualifications in that sense, but actually do want to work with you in terms of young people's education. Particularly, we've had charities in the past that have worked with disadvantaged young people and wanting to provide them with a sports education or support within a tutoring environment. So yes, we do find education charities. You're welcome, Jess. You're welcome, Alina. By 888888 equals to Pfizer. Thank you very much. Amazing webinar. You are, well, thank you for that, first of all. Next webinar is on Thursday, the 29th of November, which is the last Thursday of November, Beth. So I remembered that much. Thank you very much for sharing that. You're more than welcome, Sarah. Joshua, looking forward to the next webinar. That's all the questions. Still 64 people, but I think it's probably time to call it a night. If you have any further questions, you can email info@charity-works.co.uk. Beth will pop that email address in the chat box. We will email you the slides and a link to the video when it's complete. We will very much welcome your application to either the graduate program or the taster program. It's been a real delight to be able to speak to you. Super excited to see so many bright, intelligent people come and want to work within the UK nonprofit sector. I hope you feel encouraged when you go back to university or you're at lectures tomorrow. I hope that you're thinking about what social impact you could do with your career. Thank you all very much for your time, and I look forward to seeing hopefully more of you on the 29th of November at the next webinar. Get yourself over to the website, open your application, and look forward to speaking to you soon. And a big thank you to Beth for answering the questions within the text chat box. That was your little brother, Pfizer. I like that. Okay, excellent. Well, bye to Pfizer and Pfizer's little brother. Thank you very much, guys. Hope you enjoyed the webinar and look forward to speaking to you very soon.